It's hard to imagine a life without movies. It'd be kind of boring, honestly, without our Captain Americas, our Godzillas, our superhero movies, etc., etc. Kind of wonder how people stayed sane back when movies didn't exist. And I know going out and getting some sun is good and all, but today we desperately need TVs and movies to distract ourselves and take a break. Now, if you watch closely, movies are more than just entertainment. Many of them are filled with powerful messages that have made an impact on our lives, and some of them even have hidden symbols that are trying to speak to anyone who's paying attention. Some even make references to other movies or icons of pop culture. In today's video, we're going to be looking at the top 10 Easter eggs that you didn't know exist if you're an avid moviegoer. Number 10. Toy Story and The Shining. What does a family movie from the 90s have to do with one of the scariest psychological horror films from the 80s? Well, they're connected in more than just one way. While Toy Story is one of the most popular lighthearted animated films of all time, there are many scenes that make references to The Shining, a quite disturbing film by Stanley Kubrick. The first reference is the carpet in Sid's house. If you watch closely, you'll realize that it looks like the one in Overlook Hotel, which was the main setting in The Shining. That is pretty appropriate since we all know that Sid was not a nice kid, and his house gave us that horror film vibe. And then, if you're wondering why the number 237 keeps showing up throughout the film, it might have to do with the fact that 237 was the room number in the hotel where Jack stayed in The Shining. Seems like the creators of Toy Story were big fans of The Shining, and just wanted to show people how much they loved it. Bet Stanley Kubrick would be proud of him. Number 9. The Wizard of Oz and Twister. There are plenty of movies about tornadoes, and there are many people in the United States who can relate to such events, especially all the people living east of the Rocky Mountains. And if I ask you to think about movies that have to do with tornadoes, I'm sure these two would come to your mind: The Wizard of Oz and Twister. Now, did you know that Twister pays homage to The Wizard of Oz? There's a flashback scene in Twister where the younger version of Dr. Joe Harding is playing with her puppy, whose name was Toto, just like Dorothy's dog. And then right before the tornado lands, there's a Judy Garland film playing on the TV on one of the characters. There's really no way that this is just a coincidence. Referencing Judy Garland and Toto in a movie about tornadoes is a clever way to pay homage to a classic. Number 8. Starbucks and the Fight Club. Have you ever watched The Fight Club? If so, don't talk about it. One thing you can talk about, though, is did you suddenly feel like you wanted to go get something from Starbucks after the movie? If that's the case, it's probably because David Fincher, the director of the movie, managed to place a Starbucks product in pretty much every shot of the movie. In fact, if you haven't actually watched the movie, or if you didn't know about this little detail, you could go watch the movie right after this video and see if you managed to find all the Starbucks cups hidden in the movie. While these Easter eggs are fun, they're also a reference to a line in the movie that says, when deep space exploration ramps up, it'll be the corporations that name everything. The IBM Stellar Sphere, the Microsoft Galaxy, Planet Starbucks. In a way, the director was mocking Starbucks and its influence on our society. Feels like there's a Starbucks in every corner of the world. Kinda like there's a Starbucks cup in every part of this film. Number 7. Tron. Tron introduced to us a world in which a software programmer gets trapped inside a virtual world where he has to fight against an evil security program. Back in the 80s, the idea sounded a bit crazy. Today it actually seems a little closer to reality, but I'm not here to talk about that. I just want to point out that Tron is a property of Disney, and just like many other Disney movies, there's a hidden Mickey somewhere in the film. In this case, the famous mouse appears when the Solar Sailor is traveling above different digital landscapes. But that's not the only famous face that we see during the movie. There's also Pac-Man and Donkey Kong, which are not Disney characters but are iconic of the 80s, so it totally makes sense to include them in a virtual world of that time. Number 6. X marks on The Departed. One of the most outstanding directors of our time is Martin Scorsese. Yeah, some of his movies are quite long and aren't always the most popular ones, but the guy himself is an artist. It's actually said that his movies are going to go down in history as some of the most iconic films of the last couple of decades. Back in the mid-2000s, however, Scorsese made a movie called The Departed, featuring Matt Damon, Leonardo DiCaprio, Mark Wahlberg, and many other stars. The film even won the Oscar for Best Picture and plenty of other awards. I'd say it's fair to expect some artistic and meaningful Easter eggs in a film made by Scorsese. The Departed follows a crime story that involves the Boston police and the Irish mob. They both spy on each other, and there's a lot of blood in this movie. A lot of the characters die, but what many people didn't notice right away was that all the deaths were foreshadowed. If you watch closely, you'll realize that all of the characters who died during the movie appeared early with an X in the frame. There's only one character called Sean Dingnam, played by Mark Wahlberg, who never shares a screen with an X, and also he's the only character that makes it out alive. Number 5. Disney characters crossovers. The Disney universe is massive. They've been giving us movies for a very long time, and stuff like Kingdom Hearts, which is just one big Disney crossover. And I'm sure a lot of you have caught some Disney characters showing up in movies that are not their own as well. One of the more recent examples is Rapunzel from Tangled showing up at Elsa's coronation in Frozen. Both princesses were made by the same animation branch, but this appearance somehow points at a wider universe that could someday be explored. Likewise, Aladdin's rug showed up in The Beauty and the Beast, and Scar from The Lion King was used as a rug in the 90s animated version of Hercules. Number 4. Star Wars and E.T. crossovers. Steven Spielberg and George Lucas have given us a lot of unforgettable films, and these two are friends. That's why they reference each other in the films, and they even had some interesting crossovers. E.T. the Extraterrestrial was made by Spielberg in the early 80s, a few years after George Lucas started what we now know as the Star Wars universe. But even back then, Star Wars was already becoming popular, and this is shown during a scene in E.T. where we see a kid dressed up as everybody's favorite Muppet, Yoda. After that, if you look closely at the toys in Elliot's room, I'm sure you'll spot some other Star Wars characters, but the crossovers don't stop there. Lucas also referenced Spielberg's work in 1999's Phantom Menace. Lucas had to make a lot of different aliens to populate his Star Wars universe, and some of the aliens that he created look exactly like E.T. One of them is even named Greblapes, and if you spell that name backwards, you'll get Spielberg. Number 3. Oranges in The Godfather. Martin Scorsese is not the only filmmaker who has used imagery to cleverly depict the fate of a character. Francis Lord Coppola also did this in the Godfather trilogy. However, Coppola didn't use X's, he used oranges. So all those oranges that you see in the film are there for a reason. Sometimes you see the oranges in fruit bowls, other times it's just an orange peel in a cocktail, and sometimes it's just a character casually holding the fruit. However, it doesn't matter the presentation. If you see an orange near a character, it means that the character is gonna die during the movie. This makes me wonder how many hints I've missed in other movies just because I didn't know what to look for. Now it's time for the day's best pick. The picture I chose for the day's best pick shows us one of the legendary icons of film history. I'm of course talking about Indiana Jones, and I'm about to show you a couple of Easter eggs that link this famous movie franchise with another one that you're all familiar with. With that said, number 2, Indiana Jones and Star Wars. E.T. was not the only film by Steven Spielberg that paid homage to Star Wars. The famous filmmaker also threw in some Star Wars-related Easter eggs in different Indiana Jones films. One of these Easter eggs is actually featured in the opening scene of Raiders of the Lost Ark. In this scene, Indiana Jones grabs a golden idol and then jumps into a plane that has the letters OBCPO written on the side. If you know a lot about the Star Wars universe, then you know what those letters mean. OBCPO is a reference to Obi-Wan Kenobi and C-3PO. And speaking of Obi-Wan Kenobi, there's another reference to his character in the Temple of Doom. There's a colorful nightclub in the opening scene, and if you look at the posters, the logos, and the huge neon signs, you'll see that the name of the bar is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and the performers are called Obi-Wan Dancers. Now, another Easter egg. If you watch Star Wars 7, you're probably familiar with the scene in which Han Solo and Chewbacca run from a rolling raftar. This is pretty much just a repetition of the opening scene of Raiders of the Lost Ark, in which Indiana Jones runs from a rolling boulder. Not only are the two scenes using the same actor, but they even use the same music. They definitely did that one on purpose. Before we move on, do me a favor. My analytics show that only about 15% of you watching are actually subscribed. Come on guys, what's up with that? Can you guys please hit the subscribe button? You guys watch my videos every day anyway, so you might as well subscribe and keep up to date with every video we put out. Number 1. Stan Lee cameos. At the top of the list, we have the iconic Stan Lee, the comic book artist who gave us some of our favorite superheroes, such as the Hulk, Thor, the X-Men, and Spider-Man, among others. Being such an important person in the comic book industry, it only made sense to include him in plenty of superhero films, especially the ones from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. If you watch closely, you'll see him as a beauty pageant judge in Iron Man 3, a security guard in Captain America the Winter Soldier, a bartender in Ant-Man, a bus rider in Doctor Strange, and as an annoyed neighbor in Spider-Man Homecoming. Some people believe that Stan Lee's appearances in the MCU have a deeper meaning. He passed away a few months before the release of the long-awaited Avengers Endgame, but some theories claim that Stan Lee was supposed to play the older version of Captain America in that film. In that way, all of his cameos meant that he went back in time to check on his friends. There are a few flaws in this theory, but we can all agree that it's a nice way to make sense out of all those cameos. What are some Easter eggs that you found in your favorite movies? Let us know in the comment section down below, and remember to always keep your eyes wide open so you never miss any of these fun Easter eggs that have been dropped in so many movies. With all that said and done, that's our video for today, folks, and I will see you all next time. Excelsior!